Hare Krishna, hyvää huomenta. Tässä Gopinath taas aloittamassa Srimad Bhagavatam luentoa. So here is Gopinath taas beginning Srimad Bhagavatam class. And this is going to be in English this morning. Let's sing Madhava. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Jai Prabhupada Namaste. ग्रंथ श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। नष्टप्रायेषु भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भागवत्युत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी. So we are reading Srimad Bhagavatam. We are on 6th canto, called Prescribed Duties for Mankind, and this is chapter 2, which is entitled The Story of Ajamila. And today we have a double verse, verses 24 and 25. So I just read the Sanskrit through. Ajamilopyatha karnya dutanam yamakrishnayah dharma bhagavatam shuddham traivedyam cha gunashrayam bhaktiman bhagavatyashu mahatmya shravanadhare anuttapo mahan asit smarato shubham atmanah. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. After hearing the discourses between the Yamarutas and the Vishnudutas, Ajamila could understand the religious principles that act under the three modes of material nature. These principles are mentioned in the three Vedas. He could also understand the transcendental religious principles, which are above the modes of material nature, and which concern the relationship between the living being and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Furthermore, Ajamila heard glorification of the name, fame, qualities, and pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He thus became a perfectly pure devotee. He could then remember his past sinful activities, which he greatly regretted having performed. Purport. In Bhagavad Gita 2:45, Lord Krishna told Arjuna, Traigunya Vishaya Vedanis Traigunya Bhavarjuna Nirdvandvo Nitya Sattvastho Niryogakshema Atmavan. The Vedas mainly deal with the subject of the three modes of material nature. Rise above these modes, O Arjuna, be transcendental to all of them. Be free from all dualities and from all anxieties for gain and safety, and be established in the self. The Vedic principles certainly prescribe a gradual process for rising to the spiritual platform. But if one remains attached to the Vedic principles, there is no chance of his being elevated to spiritual life. Krishna therefore advised Arjuna to perform devotional service, which is the process of transcendental religion. The transcendental position of devotional service is also confirmed in Srimad Bhagavatam 1-6. Savai pumsam paro dharmo yato bhaktir adhoksaje. Bhakti, devotional service, is paro dharma, transcendental dharma. It is not material dharma. People generally think that religion should be pursued for material profit. This may be suitable for persons interested in material life, but one who is interested in spiritual life should be attached to parodharma. The religious principles by which one can become a devotee of the Supreme Lord. Yato bhaktir adhoksaje. The Bhagavata religion teaches that the Lord and the living entity are eternally related and that the duty of the living entity is to surrender to the Lord. When one is situated on the platform of devotional service, one is freed from impediments and completely satisfied. Ahaitukya pratihata yayatma suprasidati. Having been elevated to that platform, Ajamila began to lament for his, for his past material activities and glorify the name, fame, form, and pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The translation again. After hearing the discourses between the Yamarutas and the Vishnudutas, Ajamila could understand the religious principles that act under the three modes of material nature. These principles are mentioned in the three Vedas. He could also understand the transcendental religious principles which are above the modes of material nature, and which concern the relationship between the living beings and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Furthermore, Ajamila heard glorification of the name, fame, qualities, and pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He thus became a perfect pure devotee. He could then remember his past sinful activities, which he greatly regretted having performed. Om Jnanatimirandasya Saga Chaksuram Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karati Vachalam Pangam Langhate Girim Yat Kripatam Maham Vande Shri Gurun Dinataranam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram. So here Achamila has woken up to see things as they are, and this is because he was hearing on the side and seeing the discussion between the Yamarusas and the Vishnudutas, and it had been very analytical discussion to explain things as they are in the material world. Mm, and also about the supremacy of chanting the holy names of the Lord, as Achamila had accidentally done in the very end of his life. So the idea of the three modes of material nature has been brought out here. Um, Prabhupada quotes the verse from Bhagavad Gita 2.45, where Krishna explains how the Vedas mainly deal with the subject matter of three modes of material nature: goodness, passion, and ignorance. And the people in this world, they are generally in their materialistic consciousness, they are bound by these three modes of material nature. Three modes of material nature, they are called in Sanskrit guna. And guna means a rope. And these ropes, they are um, shackling a person in the material world in different ways. It is described in Bhagavad Gita also how these material, different modes of material nature uh, is acting in different ways, and also what kind of symptoms we can see in the world that are in these three modes. There's a whole chapter in Bhagavad Gita um, dedicated to the three modes of material nature. Arjuna is asking that what if somebody doesn't follow any uh, bona fide religious path for self realization? What is his dharma about? And Krishna explains that his dharma is then colored by these three modes of material nature, and it appears in different ways depending on the different mode that he's in. So the best one of these three modes of material nature is the mode of goodness. One should elevate oneself in the mode of goodness, um, being very uh, patient and enlightened by knowledge, and being very thoughtful, uh, and strive for purity, purity in life and in all his actions. And that is actually recommended for a transcendentalist also at first, because the mode of goodness is like a springboard to the transcendental platform. And lower modes, namely passion and ignorance, should be given up by one who is aspiring practitioner of bhakti yoga. And for any yogi, uh, it is recommended to give up all kinds of bad habits, give up give up laziness, lethargy, and on the other hand, um, very active life, aiming for personal sense gratification. That kind of life is recommended to give up. But still, it is said that even the mode of goodness is like a binding force, which bind one in in the mode of goodness. Um, it's still a material mode, or a rope which binds one in the material existence of the material world. So Krishna is recommending, this is quite in the beginning of Bhagavad Gita, already in the second chapter. Krishna is recommending to rise above the three modes of material nature. And there's quite the extreme example of this kind of person, um, to whom the three modes of material nature is not touching, namely Chadabharata. Well, Chadabharata is he is a kind of character that he really doesn't belong in this material world anymore. He really didn't care what was going on around him. He was simply deeply, deeply absorbed in the presence of the Supreme Lord. So, in the same way, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in his later pastimes, when he was living in Puri, he was so much absorbed in a loving relationship between the Supreme Lord. He was going in his trance, and shifting practically to another world in terms of consciousness. So, and because his consciousness was pure Krishna consciousness, he was feeling some symptoms of ecstasy, and his symptoms of ecstasy made his body to act in a way that we wouldn't really like to see in the material world. Well, out of curiosity, maybe, but his body was really not uh, very functional in. If you want to do something tangible in the material world, I mean, sometimes his bodily limbs shrank or got withdrawn inside the body. They became like a tortoise. Sometimes his limbs were extending extremely, and the joints of the limbs got loose, from each other, and He was just rolling on the ground in ecstasy, foam coming out of his mouth, and he was sometimes laughing, sometimes crying, and acting like a complete madman. So this is not very practical to act like this if we want to do something uh, something substantial in the material world. Even for preaching Krishna consciousness, if you act like on that platform, then uh, you cannot really preach Krishna consciousness to other people. Yeah, but we are a movement for sharing Krishna consciousness, and we should not act on that kind of platform. Otherwise, our sharing of Krishna consciousness wouldn't be very easy or effective. Um, uh, Also, Jadabharata, uh, he got insulted, almost killed, but he couldn't care less. He was just being absorbed in the transcendental platform. Seeing the Lord everywhere, everything, His energy, and everything that happens. He had no personal considerations for himself, for his gain and safety. And he was acting just like Krishna is saying in this Bhagavad Gita verse 245 that um, be free from all dualities uh, and from all anxieties for gain and safety. So Chadaparat was just roaming around. He didn't have any place to stay. His remained family members, when his father died, his remaining family members were just treating him like an animal. They put him on the fields to stand like a living scarecrow to keep the crows away. Then the dacoits came and caught him, and he was about to be killed. But and the Durga deity that they worshipped, she came for help and killed all the dacoits, and Jadaparata was free again. And then he was found by King Rahugana's servants, and he was being engaged in carrying the King Rahugana's palanquin. And because he didn't carry it properly, King Rahugana insulted him, and at that point he started to speak finally, and everybody could understand that this is a very elevated personality. Uh, but since we are here in the material world, we are very easily being bound by the three modes of material nature. And according to these three modes of material nature being influenced in us, we are basically categorized in different uh, limbs of a human society. Uh, the human society is, in a Vedic way, it is structured um, in Shudras, Vaishyas, Kshatriyas, and Brahmanas. And Shudras are the legs um, of the human society. Vaishyas are the belly or the waist area. Those Shudras are serving everybody else. Vaishyas, they are farming, protecting the cows, and being the mercantile class, uh, like how you say, the businessmen. And then Kshatriyas, yeah, are the administrative class, checking that everything is running nicely in the society. And the Brahmanas are the priestly class. They are the teachers, the advisors, and they are the intelligent class. So this is dharma, and as Prabhupada is quoting this the verse Savai Pumsam Paro Dharmo Yato Bhakti Dhoksaje Ahetukya Pratihata Yayatma Suprasidati. The supreme occupation dharma for all humanity is that by which men can attain to loving devotional service unto the transcendental Lord. And such devotional service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted completely to satisfy the self. So we may be structuring the human society in a certain way, but the aim of that kind of classification is to um, attain the supreme dharma, and that is the devotional service unto the supreme Lord Krishna. And uh, Krishna speaks also about this in Bhagavad Gita. Here is first of all he's reminding Arjuna that his occupational duty, his dharma is to be a kshatriya. He should fight when there's an opportunity to fight and he's in it. He should perform his duty. Um, so also Krishna is in Bhagavad Gita. He is Arjuna's spiritual master because Arjuna in the beginning of Bhagavad Gita he explains that he is confused about his duty. So please explain this to me. And he's really surrendering submissively in a heartbroken condition to Krishna and accepting Krishna as his spiritual guide. So Krishna also recommends a spiritual master in the Bhagavad Gita to inquire from a spiritual master submissively, and then spiritual and ask and to serve him. And then the spiritual master is departing transcendental knowledge. Also, spiritual master is checking the psychophysical nature of the disciple and trying to engage him in the service of the Supreme Lord accordingly. That's one of the duties of the spiritual master. So that the disciple can be best situated in the spiritual life. And what is the conclusion? What is the result of that kind of inquiry from spiritual master? Krishna says in the next verse that 4.35 Yagyatva napunarmohan evam yasyasi pandava yena putanya sheshani trakshyasyatman yatho mayi. Having obtained real knowledge from a self-realized soul, you will never fall again into such illusion. For by this knowledge you will see that all living beings are but part of the Supreme, or in other words, they are mine. So when we gain the spiritual knowledge from the spiritual master, we are beginning to see things equally, how every living being is ultimately a spiritual soul, and we all have a connection with the Supreme. And therefore, we can act along with each other in such a way that we see every living being as a part and parcel of Krishna, that we are all Krishna's children, and we should try to overlook that uh, modes of material nature that each and every person are in, and treat them respectfully as other children of Krishna, and giving everybody a chance, a facility to be connected with Krishna, because that is our uh, original uh, uh, purified or original happy position in the material in our eternal life. So Jamila, his eyes are open now, and he sees um, the wrong things that he was doing, wrong lifestyle that he was living, and uh, he understood that um, there are different kinds of designations in the material world, like this three modes of material nature. As we are a combination of three modes of material nature, uh, we are being designated in the material sense uh, of what we are, through our mentality, through our activities, and and when one comes becomes freed from the material influence, also these designations, I mean, somebody might be a president in one country, somebody might be, we are thinking ourselves to be male and female, somebody is a doctor, somebody is a garbage truck driver, and in such a way, somebody's a husband, somebody's a wife, and somebody's a child of somebody, some parents, and in this way we have different kinds of designations. But these designations, they are losing their meaning, their substance, when we are uh, above the modes of material nature. And Krishna describes different symptoms of such a person. Um, like there's a um, Bhagavad Gita verse 18:51 to 53. There's a nice list about a person who is free from the influence of three modes of nature, or on the at least on the path leading to freedom. Like one has purified intelligence, and therefore he's able to control his mind with determination, and he's giving up the object of sense gratification, and also he's free from attachment and hatred. So attachment and hatred also refers to those dualities, free from dualities, free from personal gain and safety. And he lives in a secluded place. He doesn't want to associate with materialistic people. Secluded place means that he's actually associating with devotees who are also on the same path. Um, he eats very little. Yeah, and other parts of Bhagavad Gita, there's a verse where Krishna says how yogi eats, doesn't um, eat too much and does not eat too little. And so he's in control of his own body, mind, and power of speech. Uh, and such person is always in trance, and it is detached from the material world, and he's free from false ego. So talking about those designations, and also freedom from false ego, um, he is not so much concerned whether his personal desire for sense gratification is uh, fulfilled is being fulfilled in this world or not, um, because he understands that this is just Krishna's energy which is acting in different ways. So he's not proud of anything. He's free from lust, anger, mm, and free from proprietorships. Proprietorship. He doesn't own anything. I mean, we don't even own our own bodies. It's said that we come to this world empty-handed and we leave empty-handed. So everything, including our own body, is just something we borrow from the Supreme Lord. And some because of this kind of lifestyle, one becomes very peaceful. And that is what Krishna says, that such a person is certainly elevated to the position of self-realization. So this kind of um, cultivation of these kind of qualities is in the head of Ajamila right now. We can read about it a little further. Uh, and Ajamila finally becomes completely purified. The next verse for these qualities, there's one verse which is very famous. Uh, Brahmaputa prasannatma na sachati na kankshati samasarvesu bhutesu matbhaktim labhate param. That one who is transcendentally situated at once realizes the Supreme Brahman and becomes fully joyful. He never laments or desires to have anything. He is equally disposed toward every living entity. In that state, he attains pure devotional service unto me. Um, so that's the result when we get detached from the material world, get detached from the influence of three modes of material nature. So when Achamila was able to see this, um, that what he should have been doing in his life, and compared to that sinful life that he was living, he was very much regretting, and considered his sinful life very insignificant. Um, we have an example also by um, Yamunacharya, who has been a king in his life, and he has enjoyed with maybe he had many wives, but he was definitely enjoying material opulence in his lifetime. But when he gave up his kingly position and then he started to follow the bhakti path and performing devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, learning about Him, and taking his spiritual life very seriously, he gave this um, verse which Prabhupada is sometimes quoting. Yada vadhi mama chitta Krishna padara vinde navanavara sadama nudyata rantumasid tada vadhi batanari sangame smaryamane bhavati mukha vikara sustu nisthivanamcha. Since I have been engaged in transcendental loving service of Krishna, realizing his ever new pleasure in him, whenever I even think of sex pleasure, I spit at the thought, and my lips curl with distaste. Hmm. So, definitely one who is um, above the influence of material nature and does not hanker for any personal sense enjoyment. Uh, he thinks that this sense enjoyment in this material world is simply insignificant thing. So kind of made me think that how is Yamunacharya now? Uh, uh, it seems that he has still like attachment and hatred to different things, but at least um, we can understand that there's such a thing that as sex pleasure becomes very insignificant source of pleasure. Uh, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita also that an intelligent man does not take part in the sources of misery which are due to contact with the material senses. And such pleasures, they have a beginning and an end. So therefore, uh, an intelligent person does not care for them and does not delight in them. So, um, so if we are on a transcendental platform, um, um, material world is simply not interesting to us anymore. Uh, I just had something in mind, but I think I lost it. But anyway, we might be in a big position or a small position in this material world. But if we are using Krishna's energy for our sense enjoyment, personal sense enjoyment, we are simply a thief. We can be a big thief or a small thief, but we are a thief. We are thieves. Uh, so better to um, give as much as we can in for Krishna's pleasure. That is our ultimate position to gain, and we can do that by simply start chanting the holy names of the Lord. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So I can end here. Thank you very much for your patience and attentiveness. I can see there are not really any questions, but and then I wish you a beautiful day. The sun is shining here in South Finland, and even though it's quite cold nowadays, we can still engage our selves in the service of the Supreme Lord. And even in a cloudy day, we can bring sunshine in our daily life in the practicing of devotional service. Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Karantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai. Jai Nitai Korpramananda. Hari Hari Bol.